Salve or Salve. Today's video is going to introduce Latin verb endings and will also go over the present active system. First, I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction. Hopefully what I'm talking about now will make the nitty-gritty Latin stuff I talk about later a little bit easier to understand. So there are several different parts to a verb. Really, there's several different parts to a sentence, namely the subject and the verb. Those are the two main things I'm going to talk about here. So there is the tense. This really has to do with the verb, past tense, present tense, or future tense. There is the number. This is really a subject-verb agreement. You can see it in both of them, which is singular versus plural. Then there's the person, which is first person, second person, or third person, which in English you can only see this with the subject of the sentence, but in Latin you'll see why I'm lumping person in with the verb. In English, if we wanted to change any one of these things, we would either add a word, take away a word, or switch up some of the letters to denote one of those changes. So, tense. Let's take this present tense phrase, I run. If we wanted to turn this into the past tense, I would say I was running. I've added a word there, and it's changed the tense of the verb. Now it's in the past. I was running in the past. If I wanted to make that future, I would add the word will. I will run in the future. Adding a word will makes it future tense. And then if I wanted to change it back into the present tense, then I would just take away the word that I just add and come back with I run or I am running. Both of those would be acceptable present tense translations. The person of a sentence, that can really be decided by the subject, as I said. The first sentence that I have, or the first phrase really that I have there is I run. That's first person because it refers back to me. I have a first person pronoun. I, we, us. Me is a first person pronoun, but me run is not proper English, so you normally don't see me as a subject, but me is a first person pronoun. If I wanted to change this into the second person, then I would just insert a second person pronoun. Normally that's just you or you all. Both of those would be second person pronouns. Change it into the third person. There are a couple of things I can do here. I can have he, she, it, or they. All of those pronouns denote third person, or I have a proper noun or a noun. Both of those, if the subject of the sentence is he, she, it, or they, a noun or a proper noun, I know that it's a third person sentence. There's also the number. This one's a little bit more of a subject-verb agreement. Sometimes, if you write papers for school, you'll see your teacher mark subject-verb agreement. What they mean by subject-verb agreement is that you can't have a sentence like he run or they runs. We know as English speakers that this does not sound correct. So we know that he runs and they run, that has subject-verb agreement. The verb is agreeing with the subject. And this concept of subject-verb agreement is magnified, not magnified is not the right word. It is really exemplified in Latin. All of this culminates to this sentence in Latin. All the things that I talked about, all the things that I just talked about, so like tense, person, and number, and a couple of other things that you don't have to worry about for right now. All of those things can be expressed by using a different ending for that verb. If I were to change any one of those things, if I wanted to change the tense, if I wanted to change the person, if I wanted to change the number of the sentence, you'd have to change the ending of the verb to denote that change, and that's how we know that a change has occurred. That's from the ending of the verb, we know the person of the sentence, the number of the sentence, and the tense of the sentence. So, what do I mean by a different verb ending? Let's take these two sentences. Puer in agris ambulat and pueri in agris ambulant. The only difference in between these two sentences is the subject. I've changed the subject from singular to the plural. You also notice that the verb ambulat, that goes from ambulat to ambulant. We have changed the ending of the verb based on the number of the sentence. It's gone from a T to the NT when it goes from singular into plural. As you see there, now that verb is plural and it is agreeing with pueri. It's agreeing with the subject of the sentence. Ambulat, that's the singular ending, and that agrees with puer, which is just a singular noun. So it's a third person sentence, but it's in the singular. And this will make more sense when I get into the actual verb endings in a second and when I have the example sentences later. This one is a person change. The first sentence is ego puellam amo, and the second sentence is puer puellam amat. As you see there, the ending of the first verb is o, and the ending of the second sentence is at. The first sentence is in the first person, and the second sentence is in the third person. The first sentence says, I love the girl. As we talked about earlier, I is a first person pronoun, and that's reflected in the verb. As we will learn, o is the present tense first person singular ending. In the second sentence, as we see there, the ending has changed to the at. So puer puellam amat. Puer is a singular third person subject, and the ending of the verb reflects that. Another sentence here is Cornelia subabore leget and Cornelia subabore legebat. Here, the subject is the same between the two sentences. It's Cornelia the same times, or it's Cornelia in both sentences, so we know that there is not a person change, we know that there's not a number change. So, this would be an example of a tense change. We've changed from the present tense, as we will learn, it is the present tense ending for a certain group of verbs, and we will also learn that the ebat is a certain ending for another group of verbs. The first one is in the present tense, the second one is in the imperfect tense, which is one of the ways to denote past tense in Latin. So as we see there, the tense of the sentence has changed, and we know this because of the ending of the verb. So now that we've had that introduction, I will introduce a little bit more about verbs in Latin. So in Latin, verbs, they go into different categories. These categories are known as conjugations. The conjugation of the verb will decide the endings that verb will have. As you saw there was a little bit of variation. So like the at that you saw in amat and the it that you saw in leget, while they have the same basic present tense endings, they belong to two different conjugations, first and third conjugation respectively. But we will learn that there's the same basic endings for all conjugations, but how they're formed is a little bit different. However, within a conjugation, the endings will look the same. Conjugation is, for the most part, decided by the infinitive of the verb. So, first conjugation verbs, these are verbs that have an RA infinitive ending. I say RA infinitive ending, as we will learn in Latin too, there are multiple infinitives, so it's really the second principal part infinitive ending. As we will learn, Latin verbs have four principal parts for the most part. The first one is just your normal present, that's your first person singular present active indicative. The second principal part is your present active infinitive. So know both of those parts right now because they will be really useful, and both of those together, those will decide the conjugation of the verb. Now, getting back to that. So the first conjugation verb, the second principal part, will have the RA ending, the long A-R-E. These are verbs like amo, ambulo, and paro. Amo's present active infinitive is amare, ambulo's is ambulare, and paro's is parare. These are all first conjugation verbs. Second conjugation verbs, these have the a-re, second principal part, infinitive ending. This is the long E-R-E. These are verbs like habeo, timeo, and maneo. What I want you to see there too is that the verb forms that you see under the word's infinitive ending, that's the first principal part. Second conjugations are the only class of verbs that will have that EO in that first principal part. That's the only times where we see the EO and the first principal part of the verb, if they are second conjugation. So that alone will tell you that, but these are also the only infinitives that have, or the only verbs that have the a-re ending. So habeo's infinitive is habere, timeo's is timere, and maneo's is manere. These are all second conjugation verbs. Third conjugation verbs, these have the short E-R-E infinitive ending. These are verbs like curo, scribo, and lego. Curo's infinitive is curere, scribo's infinitive is scribere, and lego's infinitive is legere. Now, within the third conjugation, there is a special class of verbs called the third IO conjugations. These have the short E, RE infinitive ending like normal third conjugation verbs, but they have their first principal parts end in IO. These are verbs like facio, yacio, and capio. And as you will see, third IO verbs, it lets you know that they're third IO because you will see that I in all of their forms. So facio, its infinitive is facere, yacios, its infinitive is yacere, and capios is capere. So for these, as I said, their first principal part will end in IO, but its infinitive will end in ERE. So it's very important to know your first and second principal parts, as I said, because those will decide your conjugation. This IO ending, it's also seen in fourth conjugations, which is why that's especially important. Fourth conjugation verbs have the ire infinitive ending. These are verbs like audio, venio, and dormio. Audio's infinitive is audire, venio's infinitive is venire, and dormio's infinitive is dormire. So far, we've learned that the ending of verbs in Latin are really important, and verbs, they also go into special categories known as conjugations. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the tenses that are in Latin. I've talked about two of them. There are six in total. 3 will be covered in this video, and they are split into 2 groups. One of those groups is known as the present system. The present system is comprised of 3 tenses. The present tense, this is things that go on in the present. You translate these verbs as verbs or is/are verbing. There's the imperfect tense, which can be translated as was verbing, and a couple of other things, but I'll get to that when I talk about the imperfect tense. And then there's the future tense, that will talk about things that happen in the future. So these would be translated as will verb if you see a future ending on a verb. Like we hinted at earlier, you can see the tense of the verb just based off of the ending for that verb. Without further ado, I'm going to go over the different tenses and the different endings that you will encounter when you look at a verb. First, we will start with the present tense. The present tense is used to describe something that is currently happening. So let's take the sentence, Marcus pilam ad sextum jacet. In this sentence, jacet is in the present tense. You'll see why in a second. For right now, take my word for it. Jacet is in the present tense, so it would be translated as either is throwing or throws. So this sentence would be translated as Marcus is throwing the ball to Sextus or Marcus throws the ball to Sextus. As I've said, it's translated either as verbs or is verbing/are verbing. All depends once again on that subject-verb agreement. Now here are the all-important present tense endings. For the first person singular, it will end in an O. If you remember the ego puellam amo example from earlier, ego, that's the first person singular, meaning I. So since it has that I pronoun, it's first person singular, and you saw that in that verb, amo, it had that O ending. The second person singular ending is an S. The third person singular ending is T, as you see up there. Marcus is a singular proper noun, and as you see there, that verb ends in a T. The first person plural ending is mus, the second person plural ending is tis, and the third person plural ending is int, just in NT. Now, as I have said, while these are the same basic endings that you will see for all verbs, there is a slight variation with how they are formed within the conjugations. So I will show you the verb forms for each one of the verbs, taking an example of one verb from each conjugation. So we will start with the first conjugation verb, amo. Amo's present forms are formed as follows. It goes amo, amas, amat, amamos, amatus, amant. If you remember, the first conjugation verbs, they have the are infinitive, the long A-R-E. That A comes all the way down for all of the forms that is not the first person singular. So when you think of the first conjugation, think A, and that A will go all the way down for the second singular through the third plural. The only exception is the first person singular because the AO diphthong does not exist in Latin. These would be translated presently, which, as a reminder, is the verbs or is/are verbing. I switch up between the two just to show that they are acceptable. So, amo would be I love, then you love, then he is loving, then we are loving, y'all love, and they love. Arguably, my favorite thing about Latin is that whenever you're working with the second person plural, you can say y'all. That's what I like about Latin, among other things. Another thing that I want you to notice here is that here and with all of the other verbs, I can add pronouns with this verb. If you just saw the verb amo, if you were to translate that as I love, it would be perfectly acceptable. That is because, as I've said, the ending of the verb and the subject of the sentence agrees. A lot of times in Latin, you're not going to be a subject of the sentence. You will have sentences a lot that's just quellam amat. Since there's nothing there, we can stick a pronoun in. So quellam amat, that is, he is loving the girl or he loves the girl. That would be perfectly acceptable. That being said, if there is a subject there, that supersedes it. So you can't have a sentence like Marcus, he is loving the girl. If it was Marcus quellam amat, you couldn't have that. The subject there would supersede. But if there is no subject to that sentence, you can add a pronoun provided that it is the correct number and the correct person that it agrees with that verb. Moving on to second conjugation. Take the second conjugation verb habeo. It goes habeo, habes, habet, habemus, habetis, habent. If you remember when I was talking about second conjugation verbs, it had that eo ending. That e stays there for all of its forms, even its first person singular. So all you have to do is change the personal endings based on the person and based on the number. That's all you have to do. You just have to change that O to an S, that O to a T, or that O to an S, O to a T, the S to the T to the mus, whatever you wanted to do. All you have to do here is change the ending. Second conjugation is actually pretty easy. So these are translated as I have, you have, he is having, we have, y'all are having, and they have. You can say I am having, you are having. All of that is okay. I just want to make sure that you guys know that you can interchange the translations. It's perfectly acceptable. As long as it's a present tense translation, you can mix and match as long as subject verb agrees and it's a present tense translation. There's a lot of flexibility with what you can do. Moving into the third conjugation. As you will learn when we get into the perfect system, third conjugation does some really weird stuff. So you just really have to memorize a lot of the third conjugation forms. So we're going to take the third conjugation verb duco, ducere, meaning to lead. So duco is conjugated in the present tense as follows. Duco, ducus, ducit, ducamus, ducatis, ducunt. For third conjugation, instead of taking something from the infinitive, it just takes an I all the way down. So with the exception of first singular, you have the is, it, and then the I mus, I plus tis. And then we get to the third person plural, my bad. For third person plural in third, ion, fourth, you're going to see the unt ending. So when you think third person plural for third conjugation, think unt. Kind of because ducint doesn't sound nearly as good as ducunt to the Romans, which is why they had that change. You'll also see a similar change in future tense when I get to that. So think I for second singular through second plural, and think you for third person plural. You'll have that you in third, io, and fourth. So duco, it means to lead, so you translate this as I am leading, you lead, she leads, we lead, y'all lead, and they are leading. Also, just to highlight, you can choose he, she, or it for second person singular, whatever you want to do. It's fine. Like I said, there's a lot of flexibility with how you translate. So ducit would be translated as it leads, she leads, or he leads. Any of those are perfectly acceptable. Now we move into third io, the third io verb capio. So capio is conjugated rather as capio, capis, capit, capimus, capitis, capiunt. As I said earlier when I was talking about how third IO distinguishes itself, it wants to let you know that it is different from everyone else, and it is going to do that by keeping the I in all of its forms. When I mean all of its forms, all of its present system forms, you will see an I in it. So you will also see that fourth conjugation does that as well. So third and third IO, they look the same, or third IO and fourth rather, they will sort of look the same, but you will know that they're different because of their infinitives. So, as you see there, it just has, so the first principle for capio is capio, and as you see there, kind of like how we saw with second conjugation, it just changes out the personal ending based on the person. Once again, when you get to the third person plural, it has that U in there, but it doesn't drop the I like in normal third conjugation. It keeps that I there, and you add the UNT to that. So it's capiunt in the third plural. Capio is translated in all of these forms as I capture, you are capturing, he captures, we capture, y'all capture, they capture. Moving into fourth conjugation. Fourth conjugation, here, one of the verbs in the fourth conjugation is audio. So audio is conjugated as follows in the present tense: audio, audis, audit, audimus, auditus, audiunt. As I said before, it's going to look the same as third IO. It keeps that I through all of the forms, and once again in the third person plural, it goes audi plus the UNT. It keeps that I, and then you add the UNT to that. So third IO and fourth, they look the same. There's a difference with the macra, as you see there. Audis, that has a long I. Audimus, that has a long I. And auditus, that has a long I as well. But they sort of look the same. So this is why it's really, really important to know what conjugation your verb falls into. Because if you don't know the conjugation that your verb falls into, it's really, really easy to mix them up, and then you'll accidentally supply the wrong form on a test, you'll get it wrong, and you'll be sad. So, moving into the translations, it's I hear, you hear, it hears, we hear, y'all hear, and they hear. So once again, this is how the present tense gets translated. A lot of it just takes memorizing. This is pretty fundamental, but once you have this down, once you get the present system down in its entirety, it's all downhill from there. A lot of the other forms are pretty logical. Moving into the imperfect tense. Imperfect tense is one of the ways to denote past tense in Latin, but there are specific times that you use this. So you use imperfect tense to denote things in the past that went on for a time. So for example, the example that Ecce Romani gives was the innkeeper was muttering with the man, or the innkeeper muttered to the man, and the innkeeper muttered, which is called the perfect tense. That's a different tense with the man, or something along those lines. As you see there, the innkeeper was muttering. That implies that it's gone on for a little while, versus the innkeeper muttered, it happened once. Another way to think of it is imperfect itself. It's derived from the Latin participle perfectus, meaning completed. The im prefix means not, so imperfect means not completed. So it's an action that happened in the past that's not completed. Perfect, the perfect tense, which is another tense which I will not get into in this video, it just means completed. So it's an action that happened in the past that was completed. A couple of other ways that you can translate it is to translate actions that were repeated, like another example that Ecce Romani gives is the charioteer was beating his horses, or the charioteer kept beating his horses. You would use imperfect for that. If you want to denote something that used to happen, like he used to live in Rome, you would use the imperfect for that as well as something started to happen. The boys started to run. So you would use the imperfect for that as well. When you reach a sentence and you see it in the imperfect and you think that you can change it with one of these things, or you don't know which one to use, just use context. Context is your best friend. Like I said earlier, you have a lot of freedom in Latin to translate them however you want, as long as they're within the rules, so just use your best judgment. So here are two sentences. Marcus Pilam ad sextum jaciebat, my bad. This is Marcus was throwing the ball to Sextus. This is just the sentence I had in present tense, but I made it imperfect. As you will see there, the ending of the verb has changed. It now has the bot ending. And these are some of the favorite ones because they are pretty cool to say in conjugation. When you translate the imperfect tense, you can translate them in a number of ways, as I have said. There you can translate them as was verbing, kept verbing, used to verb, started to verb, began to verb. Most of the time when you encounter the imperfect, you're going to translate it as was verbing. So default to that, but if you get an English to Latin translation that has one of the kept verb and used to verb or began to verb translations, you know that you will use imperfect for that. So the imperfect endings, as I hinted at, these are kind of fun to say. It is bom, bos, bots, bomus, botus, bont. So first person singular is bom. Here it has that M ending. It's not an O. Like I said, the AO diphthong does not exist in Latin, so it's an M here. But it's just really a BA plus the endings that we saw in the present tense. BA plus S, which was the second person singular, BA plus T, and then so on and so forth. So first singular bom, second singular bos, third singular bot, first plural bomus, second plural botus, third plural bont. So now, once again, we get to our good old friend, the chart. So, first conjugation. Once again, like I said in present tense, when you think of first conjugation, think A. Here, it keeps that A in all of the forms. Here, it even has that second A in the first singular. So, for our friend Amo, it's amabom, amabas, amabat, amabamus, amabatus, amabant. So you want to think that it's your verb with an A on the end of it. So think of the infinitive, but you've dropped off your RE, so it's just ama, and then you add your imperfect endings to that, your bombas spots. So that's how you'll see that a lot. So think of the infinitive vowel. You've chopped off the RE, and then you've added your imperfect endings. So this would be translated as I was loving, you were loving, he was loving, we were loving, y'all were loving, they were loving. Moving into the second conjugation, more of the same. You have that vowel that you had in your infinitive, but you've chopped off the RE and you've just tacked on your imperfect endings, your bombas spots. So habeo, its infinitive is habere, you've lost that RE, so you've just left with habe, and then just add your endings. You can do that with any second conjugation verb. So it's habebom, habebas, habebot, habebamus, habebatus, habebont. It's a lot of B's. It's a mouthful to say. This would be translated as I was loving, you were loving, she was loving, we were loving, y'all were loving, they were loving. Moving into third conjugation, this one actually looks kind of regular. Here you do have your E that you had in your infinitive. Duco's infinitive is ducere. And you have ducere, you've chopped off that RE, so it's just left you with duque. And you just add your imperfect endings to that. Duque bom, duque bos, duque bot, duque bomus, duque botus, duque bont. These are translated as I was leading, you were leading, she was leading, we were leading, y'all were leading, they were leading. So now we get into third IO. As I have said, and I will say many times more throughout this video, third IO wants to let you know that it is different, and so it does that by having the I in there. So instead of just coming straight off of its infinitive, it comes off of this one. You can think of it as coming off of your first principal part. So copy as its first principal part, chop off that O, and you're left with copy. And then you add the E from its infinitive, and then you add the bombas spots. You will also see this IE in fourth conjugation. So when you think of third IO and fourth, just think IE and then your ending. So EA, bomb, EA, boss, EA, bot. So copy A bomb, Capiebon, capiebas, capiebot, capiebamus, capiebatus, capiebont. These are translated as I was capturing, you were capturing, he was capturing, we were capturing, y'all were capturing, and they were capturing. Now we move into fourth conjugation. As I said, it keeps that IE. Third IO and fourth, think of that extra IE, or think of that IE ending when you think of imperfect. So fourth conjugation, IE plus your imperfect endings. So adiebam, adiebas, adiebot, adiebamus, adiebatus, adiebont. And this is I was having, you were having, it was I was hearing, you were hearing, it was hearing, we were hearing, y'all were hearing, and they were hearing. And I want to make sure that it's clear is these are just example words. These work for any verb in fourth conjugation. So if I took another fourth conjugation verb, let's just say dormio. It is dorm, and then you have that IE, so it's dormier, and then you add your personal ending. So dormiebom, dormiebos, dormiebot, so on. Wenio, same thing. Weniebom, weniebos, weniebot. And I could keep going, but I have more of a video to run. So these are all of your imperfect endings. Now we move into the future tense, which, aptly named, talks about things that happened in the future. This tense is used to denote actions that will happen in the future. So now we see this sentence, Marcus pilam ad sextum jaciet. This is Marcus will throw the ball to Sextus. As we see, it kind of looks like the present ending, but we can see that it's a little bit different. It has that et. This is translated as will verb. Now, the lack of cool things that you can do with the future tense is totally made up when you see its endings. So, the future verb endings. There are two different future verb endings, or two different types of future verb endings. So, there's ones for the first, second conjugations, and the ones for the third IO, and fourth conjugations. So, first, second conjugations, these are a lot more fun. It is bo bis bit, bimus bitus bunt. I'll say that again. For first singular, it's bo. For second singular, it's bis. For third singular, it's bit. First plural, it's bimus. Second plural, it's bitus. Third plural, it's bunt. As we see there in third plural again, you have that unt, similar to how we saw in the third IO and fourth, where we had that unt in the third person plural. That's one way that you can think about it if you don't want to accidentally say bint, which I know has happened before because I've done it. Another way you can think about it is that baseball teams, the baseball teams bunt. I'm a baseball person, so that's how I think of it. Baseball teams, that's third person plural, and bunt, that's the ending. So whatever way works for you to think about it, whatever way works for you, that you know that it's bunt and not bint, go ahead and use it. So for third IO, and fourth, these are ace et, amus atis ent. Our first singular is second singular is ace, third singular is et, first plural is amus, second plural is atis, third plural is ent. So now that we have those endings out of the way, let's get our chart. Let's see how they look on the verbs themselves. For first conjugation, you're going to take the same stem that you formed your imperfect off of. So your infinitive, ditching the re, so ama, and then you just add your bo bis bits to that. So ama bo, ama bis, ama bits, ama bimus, ama bitus, ama bunt. This is translated as I will love, you will love, he will love, we will love, y'all will love, they will love. Second conjugation, more the same. Take the stem that you formed your imperfect off of, so your infinitive, drop the re. So habere, drop the re, habe, and your bo bis bits to that. Habebo, habebit, habebit, let me start over. Habebo, habebis, habebits, habebimus, habebitus, habebunt. Like I said, with the B's, it gets kind of tricky. I should have picked a different verb, but that's on me. I didn't. This is translated as I will have, you will have, he will have, we will have, y'all will have, and they will have. I apologize that the spacing gets a little wonky for third IO, and fourth, but I promise you I fixed it. It gets a little better, and it'll look fine when you see the big chart at the end. So these, since we've gotten our first and second conjugations out of the way, now we get into our ace et endings, which admittedly are not nearly as fun to say. But here we have the first principal part, which is duco. We drop that O off, and instead of adding the is, it endings, we add your future ending straight off of that duke. And you do that all the way down. So ducam, ducase, duquet, ducamus, ducatus, duquent. Note the macra in ducase, ducamus, and ducatus. That's really it. It's just take that first principal part, chop off that O, and add your future endings to that. Nothing special for third conjugation. This is translated as I will lead, you will lead, she will lead, we will lead, y'all will lead, they will lead. Now we move into third IO, and like I have said many different times, it keeps that I, it lets you know it is not a third conjugation verb, it is different from that. Well, it's third IO, so I mean it has third in the name, so it can't be too much different, but still. It has that I in there, and that's what I want you to take away from this. So here, similar to how third was formed, you take its first principal part, you drop that O down, and then you just take that stem. So copy O, drop the O, which is leaves you with copy. Add your future endings to that. So your ames et. So copiam, copies, copiet, copiemus, copietus, copient. This is translated as I will capture, you will capture, he will capture, we will capture, y'all will capture, they will capture. Moving into fourth conjugation, more of the same between third IO and fourth. You have that first principal part, chop off that O, and add your future endings. Take audio, chop off that O, leaves you with audi. Then you add your ames et. So audiam, audies, audiet, audiemus, audietus, audient. These are translated as I will hear, you will hear, it will hear, we will hear, y'all will hear, they will hear. Now, a couple of things to note, and I really want to harp on this, and I will harp on it at the end even more. Know your conjugations. As you see, so let's take the form duquet. Duquet, well, you could get that very easily confused with habet, because habet, that's a future form, habet, that's a present form. Duquet, that's a future form, but they both have that et ending. So it is very important that you know your conjugations, so you know what form to expect so you know what form to expect. So you know if you see a third conjugation verb, or so you know if you see an et and it's a third conjugation verb, you know that it's future. So you know if you see an et and it's a second conjugation verb, you know that it's present. Also, it's really important in the future to know your conjugations because the endings switch in the middle. Many a times I have given the future form of skio, which is a fourth conjugation verb, as skiebit or skiebimus. No, don't do that. Don't follow down the same mistakes that I have made. Make sure that you know your conjugations, and you know, especially with future tense, because the endings switch halfway through. Not exactly halfway through, but they switch in the middle. So make sure you know your conjugations. Now that I've talked my head off for 40 minutes, you guys get to practice what I have just yapped about. If this concept is hard for you, it takes a lot of practice. It probably took me 3/4 of Latin 1 to really get this down and make sure that I have the correct ending each and every time. So just keep practicing. This is very fundamental, so you have to know that you have to make sure that you have this down. But once you get it, it'll be pretty easy, and you'll be able to do it almost every time, and it'll be pretty subconscious. And if you can get to a point where it's subconscious and you can just look at a verb and you know its ending, and you just know that this ending will agree with this subject, then you're good. And that takes a lot of the hardships out of Latin, actually. So I have these forms questions. The first one I will go over, and then the other three you can do on your own. It looks like a lot, but I promise you it isn't. These are just formed like Curtamen questions, so That's why it has a lot of jarble in it, but it's not that hard to understand once you know what they're asking. So like I said, I'm going to go over the first one. For the verb paro parare, give the first person plural, imperfect active indicative form and its English translation. Very rarely in Curriculum they'll ask the English translation part. I just threw that in for more practice. Make sure with the translation part, when you do get to that, you do add the correct pronouns. I do want to make sure that you have that down as well. So, let's break down this question. For the verb paro parare, give the first person plural imperfect active indicative form and its English translation. So, first person, the first part tells you the person that they want your form to be in. Then they'll say plural or singular, so you know the number. And then it'll give you the tense. In this case, imperfect. Right now, active indicative does not mean anything. You might have learned imperatives, and that's not this video, but right now, everything that I have taught you is in the active indicative, so don't worry about that part right now. That's a later video to cover. If you really want to know, active voice, that just tells you the voice, and indicative tells you the mood. So now that we know that, now that we know what they're asking us for, what we can do is, let's see with the verb what conjugation we have, so then from there we know what endings to supply. So paro parare, we have that long A re ending, so we know that this is a first conjugation verb. So they are looking for the imperfect tense. So we know that that's going to be our bombaspots, bombaspotis, bont endings. We're in first conjugation, so we know that imperfect, so the imperfect tense will be the infinitive, drop the re, and then you'll add your bombas endings to that. So if it was a verb like amo, it's amo, or its infinitive is amare, drop the re, and then amabam, amabas, amabat. Same thing with paro. Parare is its infinitive, drop the re, so it'll be para plus your bombas spot. So now all we have to do is just select the first person plural imperfect ending, which is bombus. So the form is parabombus. Its English translation being imperfect, it was verbing, and we also need to supply a pronoun, so we were preparing. That would be the translation for parabombus. So as you see on the screen there, parabombus, we were preparing. Now try the other three on your own. Take a second, pause the video, try to work them out. All right, let's move into this second one. For the verb lego legere, give the third person plural present active indicative form and its English translation. So, lego legere, this verb means to read. So we're looking for the present, tense. So now that we know what the tense is, what conjugation is lego? Lego is third conjugation, as we see with the short e, re, infinitive. So it's third conjugation, so we know it's first principal part for the first person singular. Then we've got I's plus your personal ending for the second singular through second plural. And then we know it's that UNT ending for a third person plural. So let's think about that. So now that we have that in mind, let's look at what our number in person is. Third person plural. So we're going to have that UNT ending added to the first principal part minus the O. So leg, that is our stem. Then we're going to add the UNT. So our form is legunt. Since this is present tense, this would be is verbing, are verbing, and verbs. So the pronoun here is they, and then read, or they are reading. Both are acceptable translations. Now we move into the next one. For the verb faccio facere, give the first person singular future active indicative form and its English translation. So faccio facere. We see with the short E-RE ending, we know that it's going to be a third conjugation verb, but we see in the IO, in the first principal part, that this is going to be a third IO variant. So, third IO, what do we know about third IO? It lets you know it's different by just adding that I. It will have that I. If we remember how future is formed for third conjugations or third IO conjugation, you have that first principal part, faccio, you drop that O, and then you add your future endings. Now that we know that we're working in the future tense, there are two different tracks of endings that we can go off of, the bo bis bits and the ace ets. Since this is third IO, we want the ace et ending. So now we know it's ace et, we know that our stem is faci, and we just have to add the correct ending to that. So first person singular future ending, that's the ace et, is am. So faciam, that is our form there. Now that we have our form is faciam, now we got to give the English translation for that. Facio facere means to make or to do. So we know that it is in the future tense, so it's will verb, first person singular, so the pronoun there is I. So we have our form, faciam. It's translated as I will make or I will do. The last form's translation that I have is for the form dormio, dormire. Give the second person singular imperfect active indicative form in its English translation. So dormio, dormire. We see it's dormio, we see that IO ending, so we think to ourselves, well, the only two classes of verbs that have that IO ending is third IO or fourth. So now we look at our infinitive, and we see dormire. We see that IRE. So, since we see long IRE, we think, oh, fourth conjugation. So we know that we are dealing with a fourth conjugation verb. Now we look at our tense, because we want to see what our form is going to look like. What's the stem that we add our endings to? So we see that it's imperfect. So we remember it's the dorm, then we have the IE, and then we add our endings. Remember, third IO and fourth conjugation imperfect, think IE. You will always have that EA bomb, EA bus, EA but. So now all we have to do is just supply the correct ending and we'll be good. So we're looking for the second person singular ending. So bomb bas, that's second person singular. So dormir bas. Dormir bas is our form for this question. Now we need the imperfect tense. This is the was verbing, second person singular, so the pronoun is you. So the translation is you were verbing. You also need the verb. Dormir, dormire means to sleep, so you were sleeping. So dormiebas, you were sleeping. That would be the answer to this question. Now we get into some sentences, sententiae. What I will do is I will walk through the first two sentences and make sure that you are thinking about some things when you are translating from Latin to English and from English to Latin. And then I will give you the other two sentences on this page, plus I have another page with 4 other sentences, 1 Latin to English and 3 English to Latin, that you will be able to practice on your own. So we're going to start with the first sentence. Caesar will capture Gaul. Caesar in Latin is just Caesar Caesaris, masculine, meaning Caesar. Gaul is Gallia Gallii, feminine, meaning Gaul. So, let's take a look at the subject of our sentence. It's Caesar. Caesar, this is a singular proper noun, so it's third person singular, because as we said, proper nouns, those are third person. So our subject is in the third person singular, so we have to have our third person singular endings in mind. So for present tense, that's just the T. For imperfect, it's bot, and then for future, it's bit or et, depending on what the conjugation of our verb is. So now what we got to do is we have to look at the tense of our verb. Our verb is will capture. Will capture, well, that's future tense. So now we've narrowed our possible options for for verb endings down even further. It's going to be either bit or et, depending on what verb we use. Will capture, the verb for to capture is Habeo capere. That means it is a third IO verb, and since we're working with third IO, we have to use our ames et ending, so et will be the ending. With future, as we remember, we have the first principle part, capio, we drop that O, which leaves you with capi, because remember, third IO lets you know it's third IO by having that I in every single form. So copy, and then you add the et, so copiet, that will be your verb here. It's third person singular, which agrees with our third person singular subject, which is Caesar, and it shows us in the future tense because will capture. All left for us to do is just make Gaul a direct object. Since it's first declension, we have our am ending, so Gallium. So this sentence would be translated into Latin as Caesar Gallium capiet. Now we do a Latin to English translation. This one has this has some weird grammar translations. If you don't know what they all mean, don't worry about it. The focus of this video is verbs, so I want to make sure that you have the verbs down. If you don't know how to translate cum pueris or in horto, don't worry about that yet. So this sentence is canes in horto cum pueris ludebant. If you don't know, the verb that ludebant comes from is ludo ludere, meaning to play. As we see with the ending of the verb, we have that bant. So we see with the bant right away, that comes from bombaspat, bombaspatis bant. So we know we're working with an imperfect translation. We see our subject there is canes. We see that long es, and we think, oh, that's third declension nominative plural. So we know that it's going to be third person plural, and that is backed up by the ending of the verb. We see that nt, and as we have said, nt, that's indicative of third person plural. So we know that our verb is third person plural, and it's also imperfect. Ludebant, as I've said, means to play. The imperfect translations are were verbing or was verbing, so were playing would be the translation of this verb. Now that we have the verb down, we can translate the rest of the sentence. Like I said, if you don't know the different things, I'll briefly mention them. Don't worry about this. So canes, which is common, meaning dog. So it's plural to the dogs. We're playing in the garden. This is an ablative place where. Hortus, horti, masculine meaning garden. Cum pueris, this is an ablative accompaniment. This cum is translated as with. Puer, pueri, masculine meaning boy, with the boys. The dogs were playing in the garden with the boys. Now we have the final two sentences on this page. Take a second, pause the video, try them out on your own, do your best to translate them. I will go over them in the same amount of detail that I did the other two, but just try them on your own first. You got this. All right, so let's take a stab at this first sentence. Today I am writing letters in the house. You don't know the word for letters, that's epistola, epistolae, it's feminine, and it means letter. First thing that we want to do, let's take a look at the subject of our sentence. The subject of our sentence is I. Since it's I, we know that it is going to be first person, and since it's I, it's singular. So we know that the ending of a verb has to be first person singular. So it's either going to be an O, it's going to be a bomb, it's going to be a bow, or it's going to be a depending on the tense. So just an O, a bomb, a bow, or an We know it's one of those four options. Now we take a look at the rest of the verb, and we see that it is I am writing. Since we see the translation, I am writing, we know that this is in the present tense. So now that we've narrowed it down to first person singular, we've also narrowed it down to present tense, we know that we are going to have that O, we're going to have that O be the ending that we add on to our verb. And as it so happens, the first person singular, present, active indicative, but don't worry about active and indicative yet, the first person singular present form, that is our first principal part. So we know that the verb for to write, the first principal part, that's what we want here. And that happens to be the word scribo. Scribo means to write. So now the rest of the sentence. Today, that's just hodie, ego. Like I have said, pronouns are sort of optional because they are implied with the verb. You do not need to have ego in this sentence. You could just have hodie epistolos in vila scribo. And I would know that the subject of the sentence is I because of that ending. I know that it's the first person singular ending. I don't see a first person singular subject in the sentence, so I know that it is I. Like I've mentioned, sometimes the subject is implied with the verb. Hint, hint for the next sentence. So if you need to change something up, do that real quick. Now with that out of the way, I can get to the rest of the sentence. Today, that's just hodie, ego. You can have this, you may or may not have this. Epistulos, this is the direct object of the sentence. So first declension, plural, accusative ending is os, so epistolos. In vila, this is another ablative place where, and then our verb, scribo. So now we get into the Latin to English translation, ambulamus in sylvis. As I just stated, sometimes the subject is implied with the verb. Since we see that this has the mus ending, we know that this is going to have a first person plural subject. Since the subject has to agree with the verb in the ending, we don't see another first person plural word in this sentence. That is in the nominative case. In sylvis, despite the fact that it's ablative, it is plural, but it's a noun, so it's third person. So we know that we're going to have to add a pronoun, and that pronoun is going to function as our subject. We see the verb ambulamus. We see an A. So that A should tell us right away, hey, we're working with first conjugation. Remember, first conjugation, think A. So we see an A there, so think first conjugation. We know that the other possible endings are bombas bot, is bont, and bobis bit, is bunt. We don't see a B outside of, we don't see a B at the ending of the verb. We don't see any of the bombas bots. We do not see bombus. We do not see bimus. So we know that this is going to be present tense. This is the present tense ending. So the translation for this will be is/are verbing or verbs or verb, depending on the subject verb agreement. The first person plural pronoun is either we or us. In this sense, we makes more sense. So you translate this as we walk or we are walking in the forests. Once again, silvi, that means forest. We have to go ablative plural, which is the east ending, so that's why I have that form there. As promised, here are the other 4 sentences, 1 Latin to English and 3 English to Latin. The reason for the more English to Latin, more practice with forms. So take a second, pause the video, and try these out on your own. All right, let's move into these sentences, these sententii. What would that be? That would be high sententii, I believe, if I remember my forms of hic correctly. But don't worry about that. That's later in Latin 1. But anyways, let's start with this first sentence. Servi kibum in kulina parabant. So first, let's take a look at this verb. We see that it has the bont ending. We see bont and we're thinking to ourselves, oh, this is imperfect. Next, we want to look at the other ending, the last two letters. We see that it's an NT, so it's like, oh, third person plural probably. And yes, that is confirmed by servi, which is a plural noun. So we know we indeed are working in the third person plural imperfect. So we know it's imperfect, so we know that our translation, that's going to be was verbing. Paro means to prepare, so we're preparing would be the translation in this instance. Now that we have that, we can translate the rest of the sentence. The slaves were preparing food in the kitchen. Now we move into our English to Latin translations. Let's start with this first sentence. Tomorrow I will write letters again. The word in Latin for again is iterum. That just means again. So now we want to look for the, well, first let's look for the subject of the sentence. This one is I. I am the subject of the sentence. So we know that from that, we're working with first person singular, so we're either going to have just an O, we're going to have bomb, we're going to have bow, or we're going to have It all depends on the verb. So now we take a look at the verb. We see the word will. Oh, we're working in the future. So now we're narrowed down to two different options, either bow or So now we see our friend the word write. To write, once again, that's scribo scribere, which is a third conjugation verb. So we know that we're going to have to use our ace et endings since it's third conjugation. So if we remember third conjugation future, that's formed first principal part, drop the O, and then you add your future endings to that, your ace ets. Since it's first person singular, we have the ending. So our verb here will be do come. Now that we have that, we can just go through the rest of the sentence, which is cross ego. Once again, you don't need to have the ego there. That is implied with the first person singular ending on the verb. So cross ego epistulos iterum scribam. Now we move to the next sentence. You were sleeping for a long time yesterday. The word for a long time is diu, and the word for yesterday is Harry. So really, the only things you have to do is figure out the subject of the sentence, and you got to figure out the verb of the sentence. It's not that much work here. So we see the subject of the sentence, which is you. So you, we see that second person singular. Know that right away. So we're either going to have an S, a boss, or a bis, or an ace, depending on the tense. Then we see were. We see our tense of the sentence, and we know that our tense is imperfect, so we're going to have the boss ending. Now we see the verb itself, and we see that sleeping. We know to sleep is dormio, dormire. Ergo, we know this fourth conjugation. Fourth conjugation, imperfect. We got to think ie bom, ie bus. So we know it's our stem plus ie plus our ending. So dorm, that's the stem because dormio, that's our stem. And we add the ie, dormie. And then our ending is bos. So our form there is dormie bos. That's the second person singular imperfect of dormio. So then we can translate the rest of the sentence. To, once again, you don't need to have this. It is implied with the singular nature of the, or with the second person singular nature of the verb. Since we see that second person singular ending, we know that we can add the to there. Whether you have it or not, it's irrelevant. Doesn't matter. So, to, whether or not you have it, Harry diu dormiebas would be this sentence. Finally, we move into the last sentence. The slaves will remain in the fields because the master is angry. There are two verbs in this. The second verb is. Right now, all you have to know is est. This comes from the verb sum esse. It's not imperfect, it's irregular. So don't worry about that for right now. All you have to know is that is est, and I'll cover irregulars in another video. The main verb here that I wanted you to translate is will remain. So first, let's find the subject of the sentence. We see that it's the slave, so we know it's going to be third person plural. So we see that, third person plural, and now we move on to the verb, which is will remain. We see the will, we think to ourselves, oh, that is future. So the third person plural future endings, we're either going to have bunt or we're going to have ent, depending on the conjugation of the verb. Now we see the verb itself, which is remain. We see remain, the verb for remain is maneo, manere. So, since we see the eo in its first principal part, we think to ourselves, oh, we use our bobis bit endings. And because we use our bobis bit endings, the endings that we're going to tack on is bunt. If you remember, for future, for second conjugation, we take the infinitive, we drop the re, which leaves you with mane, and then you just tack your ending onto that. So you get mane bunt. Translating this entire sentence is as follows. Servi integris mane bunt quod dominus est iratus. Something that I kind of said before, if there's a subject there, servi is the subject of the sentence. You can't have a pronoun there. Like, you can't have the slaves, they will remain. Since there's a subject there, you have the subject. You cannot have something be implied by the ending. You can't have a noun be implied by the ending of the verb. You can only have pronouns be implied by the ending of the verb. All right, that's pretty much it. Let's close this video out. In closing, in Latin, to denote the different tenses, numbers, and persons, as well as mood and voice, the ending of that verb will change to accommodate that change. While all verbs have the same basic endings, like present tense, those have the OSTs, imperfect has the bombat spot, and future has the bobis bit or ames et, they're not all formed identically, like take amat and yakit. Both of those are third person singular presents, but as you see, yakit ends in an it, where amat ends in an at. So they are not all formed identically, and to know how specifically that verb is formed, you need to know the conjugation of that verb. Forms within a conjugation, they are identical. So amat and ambulat, those are both first conjugation verbs, and as you see, they both end in at. Like in English, Latin verbs have different tenses. All of the tenses in Latin are split into two groups, and one of those groups is known as the present active system. The other is the perfect active system. The present active system is comprised of three tenses: the present tense, imperfect tense, and future tense. Present tense governs things that are currently happening, that happen in the present. These are translated as verb or verbs, depending on your subject-verb agreement, and is verbing / are verbing, once again, subject-verb agreement. The imperfect tense governs things that happened but went on in the past. As I gave as the example before, the innkeeper was muttering. That happened for a time versus the innkeeper muttered. It happened once. Once again, imperfect comes from perfectus, meaning completed, and then the im means not completed, so imperfect is an action in the past that's not completed, while perfect is an action that happened in the past that is perfectus, completed. It can also govern things that repeatedly happen, kept happening, or started to happen. The most common imperfect translation that you will see is was or were verbing, depending once again on that subject-verb agreement. The future tense governs things that happen in the future. This is translated as will verb. Here are the different endings. Once again, these are the basic endings. Based on the conjugation of the verb, the verbs will look a little bit different. For present, it's OST mustis int for first person, second person, third person singular, then first plural, second plural, third plural. Imperfect is first singular bomb, second singular boss, third singular bot, first plural bombus, second plural botus, third plural bont. For future, for first and second conjugations, because as I said before, Future endings are split between two groups, the first, second conjugations, and the third, ios, and fourths. For first, second conjugation, it goes bo bis bit, bimus bitis bunt. And for third, io, and fourth, it's am ace et, amus atis ent. Here are some of the things worth noting in the forms themselves. As I just said, the switch in future. Bo bis bit, those are for first, second conjugations, and am ace et for third, io, and fourth. You gotta know the conjugation of the verb, and that's something I will harp on in a second. The I in third conjugation. It seemingly comes out of nowhere, but for the present forms for third conjugation verbs, you see that I. So duco, then you see do kiss. You see that is, then you see that do kit. You see it again. So you see the I's for second singular, third singular, first plural, and second plural, but not third plural. I'll get to that in a second. Imperfect in future for third io and fourth, it has that extra I. So remember, copier bom, copier bos, copier bots. Third io lets you know that I is there, lets you know that it is different from all the other ones. For future, copiam, copies, copiet. Same thing with fourth. It would be audiebom, audiebos, audiebots, and audiam, audies, audiets. Of course, this audiam, audies, audiet, just extra emphasis on that extra I for third io and fourth in the imperfect and future tenses. Third io and fourth conjugations, as I just said, for the third person plural, it will have that you. This is for present tense. Just remember that you, so it's not du kint, it's du kunt. It's not copient, it's copiant. It's not audient, it's audient. Remember that unt ending. Remember that extra u. And finally, most important thing is know your conjugations. There are some times where some forms are ambiguous. For example, sometimes second conjugation present looks the same as third conjugation future. Sometimes you can look at the imperfect in the future of a third io and fourth conjugation verb, and then you will mistakenly think one is the other, and then you conjugate it incorrectly in the present. Or you give the wrong infinitive would probably be a better example. You just have to know the conjugation of your verb because, as we've seen, they're formed differently based on their different conjugations, and sometimes it is very easy to mix up the conjugations, but if you know them, then you'll know how they're formed, and then that'll be one of the first steps to making sure that you have the correct forms on that verb that agrees with that subject. So it is very important, know your first principal part of verbs, know your second principal parts of verbs, and through that, you will know the conjugation of your verbs, and that will make your life a whole lot easier. And on that note, that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful day.